Okay. All right. Well, now we've slain our giant, as we spent the last 4 weeks looking at slaying the giant, and now we're moving beyond that, and we're going to see this very quick downhill progression of Saul, that things go bad quickly in his life. Now, I want you to think about this, and the title of the message is Snowball Effect. But I want you to think about in your own life when you've had that kind of experience where something doesn't go well and maybe you make a poor choice and that just is compounded by another poor choice. And you find things just rolling downhill into this miserable existence, this terrible pain, one thing after the other, and it doesn't seem like you're ever going to reach the bottom. And so that becomes the picture of Saul. Oh no, my good mug. Like there, that is the snowball effect. Things just went downhill quickly. And so we're going to look tonight at Saul and what happens with him. What's that?
Yep, super glue.
All right. I better make sure I got all the pieces. I'm pretty sure I don't. Oh, did something come all the way back there? All right. Okay, so the snowball effect for Saul is what we're going to look at tonight. But I want us to look at it. We're going to look at it in the context of the Scripture and what the impact that it has on God's overall story, God's overall plan for Israel. But I also want us to think about how maybe we can relate to what happens with Saul here, because it's probably more relatable to us in regards to Saul than it is for David. We don't look at what happened to David and look at that in relation to what has happened to us. We're going to look at what happens to Saul, and we're more able to kind of identify with that ourselves. And so we're going to jump in there at 1 Samuel chapter 18, beginning at verse 6. And we're going to read down through verse 16. I wasn't ready to go here.
It's warm like the snow melt.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, all right. So starting at verse 6 in 1 Samuel chapter 18, and my phone is delayed in starting here, but it says this: As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. Now, I think it's interesting that they're coming out to meet who? To meet King Saul. And what we're going to find out real quick is that even though they're coming out supposedly to meet Saul, the one that's going to get the glory, the one that's going to get mentioned the most here, the one that they're going to be cheering for, is actually David. And that's going to create a problem here for Saul in the account that we're looking at. And so victory, the returning home, in some way the king gets the ultimate credit in some way. But we know that in truth, this giant that was slain by David. And so David's certainly going to get the credit in this. And that leads us to the next verse here. Verse 7, and the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands and David his 10,000s. Now, what is the problem with that? First of all, is it true? No, it's not true, right? That's not true. For what we know, it seems that David has struck down really only one that we're aware of. That was the giant. Now, they pursued the Philistines. It's possible that he struck down others in pursuit. But generally, we know that this isn't true, what they're saying. There's this celebration, and maybe those that are celebrating don't even think about the fact that what they're saying isn't factual, and they're really not concerned about that. They're just celebrating what David has accomplished here. And so if you've ever been in a workplace where you did something and somebody else got the credit for that, you ever been in that position? and in some way, that's what Saul's experiencing here, or in a certain way, Saul's experiencing here. And so David is 10,000, Saul his thousands, and so Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. And so he is upset at this. Now, maybe we could understand that. We could identify with that. Because all of us have been in positions where someone else has got credit that we think is undeserved. And in this case, really, it's not factually accurate what they're saying. And so this displeased him. And so what does he do with that? Now, this becomes a critical moment in the story of Saul and the story that we're looking at today. Because when most of us have faced this kind of situation, what do? We go home and we grumble to our spouse about the fact that we didn't get the credit we deserved, or someone got more credit than they deserved. But in Saul's life, this is going to become a big tripping point. This is going to be a major thing that gets the snowball rolling down the hill, because he's going to respond in a way that's not called for in the moment. And so he said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom? And so David, or Saul, sees this now as what? A threat to his kingdom. The fact that they're giving him credit, David credit, that goes beyond what David has accomplished. Saul says, well, what else could they do but give him the kingdom? Well, I don't know that David, or I keep flipping that, I don't know that David or Saul is aware of this, but he is going to get his kingdom, whether Saul does anything about it or not. But Saul sees this now as David is certainly a threat to my kingdom. So we return then to verse 9. And Saul eyed David from that day on. So at that point on, now he is seen as a rival to the throne. He's seeing him as a threat. And since he sees him as a threat, it's going to change the way that he deals with him, the way that he interacts with him. The next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul. Now, we'll go back to that we talked about several weeks ago. This harmful spirit. And people debate what that means. And what I do not believe it means it's a demonic spirit. I mean, I believe it's a troubled spirit. It is the kind of thing that happens to us when we're upset about something, and we get this harmful, troubled spirit that exists in us. Not spirit in some kind of spiritual, godly sense or spiritual, demonic sense, but just this spirit of this harmful spirit that it's described here that begins to work inside of Saul. And so he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre. As he did day by day, Saul had his spear in his hand. So David now returns to his normal duties, back to what he'd done before, and that was to calm Saul. That was to be this element of peace for Saul, where he played music for him and just settled his spirit and calmed his spirit. But at this point, the calming effect of the music, and combined with the presence of David, who makes him stark raving mad, is not working out well. It's not a good combination for him. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but he had departed from Saul. Now, I got to give David props that he even was around for a second spear throw. The fact that he threw once at him and he missed him, and yet he stuck around to be thrown at him a second time, I got to give him credit for that. That's pretty courageous. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of thousands. So Saul is so troubled by David that he doesn't want him around. Now, why doesn't he just banish him back to the the prairie lands of Bethlehem? Why doesn't he do that at this point?
He knows the Lord's with him.
Okay. I think we're going to find that probably isn't the answer, Fred. We're going to see in just a minute. But he does recognize that.
He won the prize.
The guy defeated Goliath. At this point, it's going to be pretty difficult to just shuffle him off into obscurity. That would look kind of bad for the king. So probably he really doesn't have much of a choice, but to in some way give him more responsibility. And so what does he do? It says, so Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. Now, I want us to think about this. He gave him a prominent military position at this point. And so we might want to speculate what would be the advantage to Saul in that. Now, I think if we were to look into the future and we would look at the story of David further down the road, I think we might get a clue what I think in all likelihood Saul is up to here. But can you think of another story from the life of David where someone was given a prominent role in the military, and what was the purpose of that? That he would die. That was what David did with Uriah the Hittite, the husband of Bathsheba. He gave him a prominent position in the military, put him up at the front of the battle, and with the intent that he would die. So maybe this is what David eventually kind of learned later on in life, attempted this. But for whatever the reason, whether it's that or it's just the idea that this will get him out of my sight, this will put him in a place where he can be successful, but whatever it was, Saul is putting David, getting him out of the house, getting him off away from him. So Saul removed him from his presence and made a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings. And here's what, as Fred said, for the Lord was with him. And so here's what Saul responds to that with then. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went and came in out before him. Now, in one of the translations, it actually even says, it indicates, in verse 14, it says, and David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. And so there's this indication that Saul actually recognized God's presence in the life of David. That he saw that he didn't have the Lord anymore. The power of God was not resting on him anymore, but the power of God was resting in David. And what does he do? I got to get him out of my presence. I don't want him around me anymore. Whatever the reason for that, I think we're gonna speculate. We're gonna dig into that a little bit. But what I want us to consider is this downhill struggle, this downhill just momentum that Saul gathers here in how he deals with the victory of